I think we're live. Anyone who happens to be seeing this, I'm just recording direct to YouTube, and then we're going to be editing this up. So this will be the unedited version where I make mistakes. I'd like to show you some more of my guitar system, and we're going to talk about chords. So hi again, and welcome to great. Let me say that again. Okay, I'm thinking. Hi, I'm Jim Scott, and welcome again to my keys to this magic system of visualizing the guitar. Magic, I hope, is just my joke. There's no magic to this, no super talent that it takes or great insight and intelligence. I just want to show you the whole pattern, and I hope it will help you. Today we're going to look at chords. And I want to start by, let me do that again. Today we're going to look at chords, and what I hope is a system that will help you understand how all this goes together. Chords are built on notes of the scale, of course, so we'll look at that. There are essentially 5 patterns that you can play on the guitar. Let me say that again. Today we're going to look at chords and how they are built on steps of the scale, and how there are 5 essential patterns on the guitar that you can play. Really, 5. It boils down to these 5 patterns, which I believe is what some people call the caged system, C-A-G-E-D. I would have said it another way around, C-G-D-A-E, as you follow the circle of fifths, but that's another story. So there is this pattern, the E chord, and you can make it minor, you can make it 7th, you can make it minor 7th, and you can make it, how about major 7th? All those chords. I could have done that a different way, or in a different order. Here's a C chord, and then here's a major 7th chord. I take that off, and now I've got 1, 3, 5, 7. And then, or what's called a dominant 7th that we call C7th, has a flat 7 in it, and then C minor, that's a little hard to play. And I'm not sure how many people would actually play that chord, because it has this open string of a major on top, but we might use this. So I'm going to start over with that. So here's an E chord. If we add a 7th to that, a major 7th, we get that. That's one way of doing it. This has a major 7th, an octave and a half step above 1 at the top, so I think it doesn't sound so good if you add that top string. Other ways to play an E 7th, E major 7th might be like this, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Here's E, here's E major 7th, here's E 7th with a flat 7. What we call E 7th is called a dominant 7th. We'll get to that. Here's E minor, and E minor with a sharp 7, or E minor 7. So all of these are basically the same shape, just altered by a half step. This E chord, root, fifth, root, and then 1, 3, 5, 1, and then adding in a seventh and getting our basic seventh chords out of it. That's one pattern. Here's another pattern. This A chord, some people play it like this with 3 fingers across. Some people even play it like this, or like this if you don't hit the top string. I do it this way because of my big fingers. I play that, and this first finger squeezes in behind. I like it because then I can play major seventh, dominant seventh, A minor, sharp 7, A minor 7th. I just ran through them all. I was saying I stick that middle finger in there. First, yeah. I stick that first finger in between my other 2 fingers just because I have big fingers. But it makes it easy to get that pattern. And I like it also because if I'm often going to go from A to D, that finger stays there. And then it moves back. But that's just my way. You can finger it different ways. Then here's another pattern, is now with a root. I didn't say the first one. First one has a root on the 6th string. You can use all 6 strings of the guitar. The E chord. Let me do that again. The E chord has a root on the 6th string, and you get all 6 strings. The A chord, A is the open 5th string, so you just use 5 strings. The D chord has a D here, and I can't get down to a low one, so this chord has to be 4 strings, unless you play an inversion of the chord. That might be something like this, but let's not get ahead of ourselves again. Here is D, and then D major 7th, D 7th, D minor. I'm just lowering this, and so that's 3 chords that have a bass note on an open string. E, A, and D. Then we get to a G chord pattern like this, or some people like to play this with 2 fingers at the top. So it's 1, 3, 5, 1, and then 5, 1. Now that can be a 7th like this. Well, but really more likely we're going to play this. So I'm going to start that again. Here's a G chord. And some people like to play it with 2 fingers at the top, so we get 1, 3, 5, 1, and then 5, 1, instead of another third in the chord. And you hear this in a lot of songs, keeping that in there. So here's G and G major 7th, G 7th, and then G minor is going to be pretty hard to play. You can play this, but I would say most people don't use that. So what we might use is part of it. If, say, I were playing this and I had the 3rd in the bass, and then I go to the minor and to I'm going to do that again. The 3rd, and then the minor 3rd, and then going to this or something. As a passing way, we'd use part of that minor. So only 3 of the chords, E, A, and D, have a minor that's right there and ready to use. The other 2, G, I'm going to say that again later. Let's leave that out. So, did I just do all of G? I did. I'm going to do it again. Here's G. So the G chord has 1, 3, 5, 1, and then 3. Or some people like to put that finger in there and play. And then we could play G major 7th, G 7th, or G minor. This one is hard to play. You can play, whoops, G minor is a pretty awkward chord that I would bet not many people resort to this only for particular uses, like maybe we've got the 3rd in the bass, and then we go to the minor 3rd and something like that. So we use part of the chord, perhaps. If not, so then next, and then the 5th chord is this C pattern. This is Do, though a lot of people play both notes down here, having a 5th at the bottom. Either one works. Oh boy. I wasn't in tune there. Okay. And the 5th chord is C. And there are people who like to play it this way, with both G and C covered down here at the bottom. But the root of the chord is really on the 5th string, so we just play 5 strings. And maybe, if it were me, I'd be alternating them and making sure that I have Do represented. So there's C and C major 7th, and taking this finger off, then C 7th, flat 7, and then C minor is a hard one. This, and you can't even really cover a whole chord. Maybe you can like this. Nah, but again, here's C major with a 3rd in the bass. Again, let me do it. Here's C major with a 3rd in the bass, and then a minor 3rd in the bass. So we might use it in passing a part of that minor chord. So 3 of the chords, E, A, and D, have a minor that you can use all of them, and that's really the basis of a lot of what we play when we put a bar behind chords. We play E, A, or maybe, I'm saying an E pattern. Now I've moved it up. So we might play this E. I'm going to do that again. So when we put a bar behind chords, this E chord, I move it up here, it becomes a G chord. Those 3 patterns, E now becomes G. This pattern, which was A, now it's a C chord, or an F chord, which was this D chord with a bar behind it. Those 3 are what we mostly use for rhythm guitar, although I will tell you that I put a bar behind a G chord often. I have long enough fingers to do that, or the I'll do that again. Boy, I'll do that whole thing again. So I might put a bar behind this G chord and play some of these chords. Here's then a bar behind what would have been a C chord, the C pattern. And I use those when I'm playing up here, but most people, I would say, use these 3 chords, E, A, D patterns over a bar. Those. I gotta check my tuning. What is wrong with this? I guess my house has warmed up. My strings have gone sharp and I didn't pay attention to it. That's why I thought I needed to bring up that. I'm going to say all that over again because I think the guitar might have been out of tune and it's ugly, and I don't want people to have that for posterity. So there are 5 prime chords that you can play on the guitar. 5 prime patterns. And really, that's kind of all there is. And I'll show you why. There's the C chord, the G chord, the D chord, the A chord, the E chord. Those 5 chords, those 5 patterns, we alter to make them sevenths or minor, but those 5 patterns are really all you're going to use. I'm going to say that again because I was hemming it up. There are 5 patterns that we play on the guitar that really we have to. Oh boy. All right, this time I'm going to say it right. There are 5 patterns on the guitar that really it's all there is, all there are, is these 5 patterns and alterations of those 5 patterns. And I could take time to show you why, but accept this, that there are these 5 patterns: the C chord, the G chord, the D chord, the A chord, and the E chord. So some people might say them in the order that you get C, A, G, E, D and get caged out of it. But there's an E chord. You move it over 1 fret and you adjust the 2nd string to go up a 4th. And then you go move it over another string and you adjust the 2nd string to make this chord. That's too much information. I'll show you that later. So I'm going to start with the C chord. There's the C, and I could make it major 7th by dropping my finger, or I can add this note in and make it C 7th. The dominant 7th, it's called, which we just call C7, has a flat 7. Then there's C minor. Wait, I'm starting in the wrong direction because I should do the other 3 chords first that have a minor that works. Okay, I'm going to start again. So the first chord we'll look at is E, this pattern that has a bass note on the 6th string, so we use all 6 strings. This is E, this is E major 7th, which I would only use if I weren't playing the top string, because somehow this 7th and this here, an octave and a half step apart, sound weird to me. So this E major 7th could be like that. Probably we'll play E major 7th a different way, but here it is in this pattern. Then we drop it without that note on the 4th string, finger on the 4th string. Now we got E 7th, which also could have been played this way. Oh boy. Which also could have been played this way. Oh, yikes. I'll just start this whole thing over again to make it simple. So the first pattern is the E chord. It has a bass note on the 6th string, and you use all 6 strings. We can make it a major 7th, like this, moving this note down. And I probably wouldn't play the top string if I played this pattern. That is a little too dissonant, I think. But then we drop that finger to the open string, and we get E 7th. And then how about E minor? Here's major, drop this and make it minor, and minor 7th, or E minor 7th, like this. me say that again. Yeah, no, that was good. E minor. Yeah. Oh boy. Let's see if I can just do this in a run without needing to edit this all up. So let's start with this chord, E major. It uses all 6 strings. The bass note is the open low E string. Nice big full chord. We can make it a major 7th by dropping that. We can make it a dominant 7th, a flat 7 that we call E7th, like that. We can, here's the major chord again, and we drop the 3rd a half step. That's E minor. And then E minor sharp 7 or E minor 7th. The A chord has a nice bass note, open A string, but we only use 5 strings now. I wouldn't strum it from the bottom because that's not the root of the chord. So just stick to those 5 strings. And I finger it this way. Rather than 3 fingers straight across here, I finger it with the 2nd finger squeezed in here. So I can go A major 7th, A 7th, and A minor, and A minor sharp 7, which I didn't picture on our chart, but A minor 7th, it's a typical chord. Then with an open D string, got this D chord. Now this is just a 4-string chord. Unless we're gonna make an inversion of it or something, we can't use those other 2 strings and still have the root on the bottom. So this D major 7th could just be a bar across, D 7th, or here's D major, and I'll make it minor, D minor sharp 7, or D minor 7th. So all 3 of those chords have a major and a minor that all look pretty much the same, and they're all quite usable. The next 2 chords, the C chord, we could make it major 7th by dropping out that note, or a flat 7, and that's where we get what's called C 7th. And then C minor, this is hard to get we can't hit the top string if we use that, because it's a major 3rd on the top. But we might use part of it like that. So if we played a C major and then minor 2, going to D, there would be there'd be reasons why we could, there are reasons why we would use part of this chord, but the whole minor chord is almost impossible to play. You could play that. But we can use part of it and it's useful. The C minor 7, though, can be played like that, or even the whole. That's about the one that's usable. Then in a G chord, we have major 7th, the flat 7, the dominant 7th, G 7th, and then G minor is another awkward one to play. You can play that, but I'll bet most people don't use it. Again, it might be if you were playing this from the 3rd in the bass to the minor 3rd to going to this chord. So in passing, we might use part of that minor chord. But on the C and the G, the minor versions don't work very well. But there are 3 patterns, this E and A and D, that are the easier ones to put a bar behind. And so this E chord now I've moved up and it's a G chord now. It's a nice big 6-string chord. And then the A chord, A pattern here, now becomes a C chord, or the D pattern now becomes an F chord. Those are the ones when you put a bar down that people use the most. Although I'll say I use a bar behind the other 2, G And it's a big reach, but I might just play those. And here's the C chord now becoming an E flat chord. So I do use those, but they're not as strong. They're as the other ones where you got a nice bar behind them. So those are the 5 chords that everything is a version of those chords. As you noticed, here's the E chord. If I put a bar behind it, it becomes F, and F sharp, and G. So this is every chord. You know, C, B flat, A flat, G, all the same pattern, just moving up and down the guitar. So those 3, the E, A, and D, when you put a bar behind them, that's kind of rhythm guitar all over the guitar for most players. So we'll move on and look at the key. So we'll move on and look at the chords in open position. And I have something to say about how we build the chords. See you in the next session. I'm going to say that again. So we'll move on to looking at the chords in open position, where most people start playing the guitar. And we'll look at also how the chords are built on each step of the scale. So see you in the next session. Okay. Hi again. Here's how chords are made. Here's a scale, the C scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. Yikes. Here's how chords are made. We build chords on each step of the scale. So here's a scale, C major. It's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. We take the first note, the third note, and the fifth note, every other note. 1, 3, 5. It's called a triad. 3 notes make a basic chord. So every C that we play, this one, or G, or E, all of these are C, G, C, E, G. And maybe several of C's and several E's and several G's. So, like this too. These are all notes of the C chord. I played them all with a root at the bottom, but we also could have played them in inversions. The C, woo. We could also play them in inversions. The C chord with maybe an E on the bottom, or a G on the bottom, or a G on the bottom here, or a 3 on the bottom here, or a 5 on the bottom, or something like that, or a 3 on the bottom, oops, or a 3 on the bottom here. All of those are C, E, and G in just different patterns, and they make a C chord wherever you play them. So on the piano, if you hit C, E, and G anywhere on the piano, you're hitting a C chord. That was too much information, but hope you... let's leave that out. That was a lot of information, but I hope it's useful. So a C, E, and G makes it what we're going to call a 1 chord in the key of C. And it could have been here. 1, 3, 5, or it could have been 3, 5, 1, or it could have been 5, 1, 3, or 1, 3. Those are the inversions of the triad. So that's a 1 chord. How about a 2 chord? Well, we start on the 2 of the scale, do, re, and now we go 2 and 4 and 6, every other note. Well, that's a D minor chord. It it comes out D minor because we're following the scale. If we didn't follow the scale and put this note in, we could that D major. Not that we wouldn't necessarily use that in the key of C, but the chords that follow the scale are what we're calling the chords of C. So C, D minor, and then E minor. So we're going to take the third of the scale, Do, Re, Mi, and we get E minor. Then on the 4 chord, I meant to say on the 4th note of the scale, we can build a chord. That's the 4 chord. Then we've got F. On the 5th note of the scale, or down at the bottom here, that's a G chord. And then on the 6th note of the scale, we get an A minor chord to play lots of A, C's, and E's. Then on the 7th note of the scale, a weird chord comes out. It's a diminished chord that we find we don't use this often just as a diminished chord. We might use a diminished chord with a 7th, which is either called a diminished minor 7th chord or a minor 7 flat 5 in more contemporary terms. The 7 chord, the chord on the 7th of the scale, is more likely going to be a 7th chord. Or it might be those 3 notes, 7 and 2 and 4, and we'll put a G on the bottom of it. So, and we play a G 7th. So that weak chord in there either adds a 7th to it or puts a note a third below and makes it the 3, 5, 7 of a G chord. So on the patterns that we're looking at, you can see over here, there's the C chord, the D minor chord, the E chord, the F chord, the G chord, and sometimes you might finger it this way or this way. I finger it this way when I'm going from this to this, but a lot of people want to get used to just playing one fingering, so we'll do that. And then A minor. And then I put in the 7th chord, or the chord on 7, the 7 chord, as a 7th, B minor 7 flat 5, and you don't play the top string, and then or you use a G7 to harmonize that. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Those are the 7 chords of C major. We're following the C major scale and using the notes of the scale, and only the notes of the scale. Not that you wouldn't play something in C, and maybe that D7th, that had a note that wasn't in the scale. But you hear it all the time, of course. We call those altered chords, and we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to just stick to the chords of the scale. Let's look at the G chords. Again, we're building a chord on each step of the scale. So here's a G scale. So we'd build 1, 3, 5, and then 2, 4, 6, 3, 5, 7, blah, 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 like that. So the chords that come out are G, A minor, B minor, C, D, and E minor, and then here's that 7 chord. I forgot to, I'll mark this in before you get it. I'll say that again. And then the 7 chord, I'm making it a 7th, so it's F sharp minor flat 5, or F sharp diminished minor 7th is the way some theory people talk about it. Or we take those 3 notes and add a D to it and get D7th. So those are the typical chords that we use in a key. 1 through 6, 3 majors and 3 minors are the chords that we're mostly going to find in folk music and in a lot of just general pop music. Some more creative composers, certainly Stevie Wonder, or more jazz-oriented composers, you might find that 7 chord, the minor 7 flat 5 chord, in more music. And certainly a lot of jazz standard songs will have that 7th chord in it. But essentially it's those 6 chords that you're going to want to know for each key, a chord built on each step of the scale. Let's look at the D major scale and the D chords. D, here's D, the D scale. So I guess take my word for it that there's 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6, 3, 5, 7, like that. So the chords are D, E minor, F sharp minor. There's not a good way to play that without a bar, so you could just play the top 4 strings. It makes a perfectly good chord, but I hope you can get used to finding a bar chord for those things. Then G and A, we've seen those before, and B minor, and then C sharp minor flat 5, or that diminished minor 7th chord again. That's one way to play it, or more likely in typical music we're going to hear it harmonized with an A at the bottom of that triad and in the 5/7, A7th. So D, E minor, F, G, A, B, L. Let's look at the A major scale. On the same page, there's A and then B minor, C sharp minor. There's no way to play it except to get it. I guess you got to climb up here and play that. Actually, you can place parts of it in here, but I can't get a root on the bottom of it. There's no good way to play it, but here. And then D and E and F sharp, and then this G sharp minor flat 5. I didn't mention before, when we get to this chord, I'm deadening the 5th string with my finger. I'm not barring across, but I'm deadening the next string. So I can... I didn't mention this before with the F sharp minor flat 5. This minor 7 flat 5 chord, I'm deadening the 5th string with my finger. I'm letting my finger touch the next string and then playing that. Or I'm picking with my fingers and just skipping it. That's one thing we could play. Or we play E7th at the bottom of our diminished, put an E at the bottom of our diminished chord. So those are the prime chords in A major. Let's look at one more. Let me try that again. Let's look at 2 more. And they're very closely related. The E pattern and the F pattern, we're just going to put a bar behind E and get F. So here's E major. Now we're, excuse me. Let's look at 2 more, E major and F major. So we've gone adding sharps, if it makes any difference to anybody. We went to the G, which is 1 sharp, D, 2 sharps, A, 3 sharps. Now E with 4 sharps. And we'll add one scale that has a flat in the key signature, F. I'm putting them both on the same page because they're really closely related. The E chord, when you put a bar behind it, becomes the F chord. But you'll see with F, you can actually use more open string chords. So in E, we got to use a bunch of bars. The 2 chord, the 3 chord, G sharp minor, A, open string chord, then another bar, and another bar. And then we'd have the D sharp minor flat 5 chord, or we harmonize it by B seventh again. As I say, that 5/7 will harmonize that diminished, will have that diminished chord in it. So that has a lot of bars to, a lot of bar chords to play in E major. But one thing I skipped in there, let me say that again. So the E chord, no, wait, I didn't mean that. So the key of E, although there's nice open strings in this 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 3 chord, the 5 chord, and the 6 chord, and the 7th chord are all ones that there's not a good way to have any open strings involved in those things and play a whole chord. So to play an E and use all those different chords, you're going to have to get some bars going. Though the E, the 1, and the 4, and the 5, 7, you find plenty of country songs, folk songs, and things that are just those chords. And maybe a 2 chord like this or something. One little trick you can do with the E, though, is skipping your 4th and 5th strings. I'm putting my fingers, you can't see them down here, but I'm putting my fingers on the top 3 strings. And I can play all the chords of the key just like that. And if that sounds a little bit like the song Blackbird, it's in a different key, but that's the idea, using those open strings. So that's E major. Now how about F major? Here's the F chord. It's going to take a bar, or the ukulele way on the top 4 strings. You have to flatten a finger, or some people even do it like this with 4 fingers. I hope you can practice getting that flat finger there, or just bar the whole chord. And then G minor, it's going to take a bar. But A minor, well, that's open strings. Then B flat, and then C, well, that's nice, and D minor. So there's more open string chords in the key of F than you might think. And then that flat 5 chord, I gave you various possibilities of that. But more likely we're going to harmonize it with the C 7th and F. So F, G, A minor, B flat, C, D, and then we'll use the C chord, C 7th for the 7th. So there's 6 keys, and of course the next step, wait a minute, let me say that again. So there's 6 keys, and now the next step, if we would go to keys of B flat or E flat, A flat, or B for that matter, 5 sharps, we've pretty much lost our open strings, and that's a whole different thing. That's the next lesson, where we use all bar chords for the steps of the scale. And once you get into playing all bar chords, I'll just give you one little demonstration. You can play in any key. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the scale in G. So I can play a major chord on 1, minor chord on 2, minor chord on 3, major chord on 4, major chord on 5, minor chord on 6. So all, I'm going to do that again because I scratched my face. We don't want to do that in the COVID era. So we have these 6 steps of the scale right under our fingers, or right obvious right here, whole steps. The 1 chord and the 4 chord and the 5 chord are major, the others are minor. So 1, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, and then 7 is going to be up there. So once we're playing bar chords, we can play 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4, 2, 5, 1. that'll work in every key. That was G, but I can do the same thing here. 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1. Is that what I did before? I just moved up a half step and did exactly the same thing. So eventually we're going to move into those bar chords. But there was chords in open position that I hope is, I'm going to say that again. So there are chords in open position, which is where to start to learn all the chord patterns. And we're going to look at a bunch of chord progressions to practice that in the next lesson. See you then. I'm looking for the pieces of paper. Where are they? The chord progressions. Pardon me for leaving the camera on while we just go up. So here, written out with slashes for each beat that you might play, we could just strum these chords and practice playing the chords. And I'm going to put on my glasses because I've got it written small right here. You're going to see it on the screen in front of you. Tune up. So here are some chord progressions to practice your scales. Oh, yeah, that's really good. We'll try it again. Hi again. So here are chord progressions that you can practice your chords in open position, and then for that matter, you can practice them up higher. And these are just basic chord progressions. I call them typical chord progressions that you find in so many songs. I'm going to put on my glasses so I see what I wrote in small type down here, though you'll see it on the screen. So these slashes give you the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, F, 2, 3, 4, G7, like that. And each of these repeats. So I see that I'm missing one. I'll fix that before I send the PDF. I'm going to start again. Maybe I don't need my glasses. Let me try it with these glasses. Oh, that's a little better. Is this better? Okay, I'm going to use those glasses. So here are chord progressions that you can practice your chords in open position. These are typical chord progressions that you find everywhere in music. And of course there's many more, but here's just some examples to make you change chords. And these slashes are the rhythm. We play 1, 2, 3, 4 in measures of 4/4 time. So I'm going to put on my glasses just to read this small print. So in the key of C, C 2, 3, 4, F 2, 3, 4, G 7, 2. So after you strum that fourth one, you don't want to let go of it completely, but you've got time. 2, 3, 4, to get to the next chord. might be that you just play musically. So, you know, you could do this too, or short, short, to give you, to practice the time. But eventually you want to be able to drop in on those right away. The second one, C, F, G, A minor, F, G. Now that could have, we could do just the 2 bars, C, F, G, da, 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 bam, ba, da, 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 right? Or the next one, A minor, F, G, A minor, F, G. Can I see these without? C, A minor, D minor, G. I'm going to do this all over again from the beginning. Okay, without my glasses. I can see this. I'm going to turn this. I know. I'm going to raise up the music stand because the computer can't see it. Okay, I'm getting my guitar microphone over there. Okay. So here are chord progressions that you can practice your chords in open position, and for that matter, you can practice your chords in higher positions with these progressions. These are typical, ordinary, basic chord progressions you find in a lot of songs, and this will just help. It's a place to start. It'll help you put the chords together. So C, F, G, C. So those slashes are the rhythm, and you wouldn't have to play that rhythm. You could play or make up different things to make it interesting. So of course you could play these. You could practice your C chords in everywhere. But for now, if you're working on open position, let's learn them in open position. So that was the first one. Number 2, just 2-bar patterns here. C, F, G. Oh, let me do that again. So number 2, C, F, G, C, F, G. The second half, A minor, F, G. You might play the 2 of them together. C, F, G, A minor, F, G, to make it interesting. So, number 3, C, A minor, D minor, G7. If that sounds like all the doo-wop songs, it is. Do, 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 do. Third chord might have been an F as well as D minor. C, A minor, F, G, 1, 6, 4, 5. And let's look at the next one. 1, 3, 4, 5. The next one is 6, 5, 4, 5. So there's, you know, the 6th chord, 5, 4, 5. And the next one is, boy, these 4 chords come up in so many popular songs these days. 8, 6, 4, 1, And of course, I ended on 5. Come back to 1 to give you a nice conclusion. Then the next one is going around the whole circle of fifths, it's called. Now, if you learned about circle of fifths and the fifths were all perfect fifths, it would move you through every note, all 12 notes. But what we call the circle of fifths in one key, one of them is going to jump a diminished fifth, an augmented fourth, and that keeps us in the key. So in this case, it's 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. So I'm going to just play this with some seventh chords, and so you hear this is you find this in much more you find this in lots of jazz-oriented things. 1, 4, 7, 3, or maybe a dominant seventh. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. But just playing them in just straight chords will, let me say that again, but just playing them as straight chords and just practicing that circle of fifths, I think is really useful. Say F, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. So there's the key of C. Let's look at the key of G and do all the same patterns. And just to show you, you can take this through every key. So that was the key of C. But now let's look at the key of G and the same patterns. I'm going to do them a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, no, no. I'm hitting the bass note and then strumming. That's one way to do it. I'm going to do that again. I'm hitting the bass note and then strumming. Boy, I hit the wrong note again. I'm going to do it again. I'm hitting the bass note, the 5, 1, 1, 4, 5, 1. You could alternate even with a pick. You know, people do that, hitting the bass note and strumming the chord, or any patterns that you come up with, even in 3/4 time. Things like that. So then the next one. Together was C, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 1, like that. The next one, our doo-wop chord progression. Let me do it in 4. So the next one, our doo-wop chord progression. 1. So many million songs on this progression, and then maybe instead of the 2-chord A minor, we'll put a C in there on the 3rd measure. G, 6, 5. I didn't say that right. I'm going to do it again. G, 6, 4, 5, 1, 6, 4, 5, or here's the way it was originally. 1, 6, and the 2-chord, 5-chord. Yeah, and then the next one, 1, 3, 4, 5. 1, 3, 4, 5. 1, 3, 4, 5, like that. Then the next one, the relative minor, I guess you'd say. So the next one, the relative minor, 6, 5, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, 5. this one that's just such a typical progression in a whole bunch of pop songs. He says 6, 4, 1, 6, 4, 1. That. And then all around the circle of fifths, C. Then all around the circle of fifths with that one diminished fifth in there. So it doesn't go G, C, and F natural if you know the real full circle of fifths. This is, we're bending it so it stays in one key. G, C, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5. So here's some other keys that, let's look really quickly. I'll just do I gotta move this. So I won't do them all, but here's the key of D. 5, 1, 1, 4, 5, 1. Or the doo-wop one, this is 17, 2. Right? The last, I'll just do the last one on the page, the whole circle of fifths. 1, 6, 5. Yeah, let's look at the key of A major. I gotta shift this over. I'll say that again. So a quick look at the key of A major. 1, 5, 4. 1, 4, 5. And the whole circle of fifths, I'll just do that down at the bottom. 1. I'm gonna do that again. 1, 4, 7, and that one, you don't hit the top string. 6, 3, oh yikes, I gotta say the right numbers. So this is the circle of fifths at the bottom. 1, 4, 7 chord, you don't hit the top string. 3 chord, 6 chord, 2 chord, 5 chord, 1 chord. So I hope you can practice these and have a good time learning these progressions or getting them to be second nature, and your fingers just fall on those. When I see them in written music, I've played them so many times, or I recognize the 1, 6, 2, 5, or whatever, that I immediately, my hands fall on it. So have fun practicing those. We'll see you in the next lesson. Well, we got it all, I think. I'll say this. I hope these chord progressions help you practice these chords. And as I said, in open position, that's one thing. But if you know enough to know the positions up higher, practice those same chord progressions in every key all over the place. There's basic rhythm guitar. Get your fingers to land on those chords. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.